Welcome to the Yo-11 podcast. Yo-11 podcast, mostly Vegas, no BS casino experience, and more. Today's episode, the end of an era. Mirage Las Vegas closes. This is episode 101, season 4. Welcome to season 4 of the Yo-11 podcast. Michael Traeger is a casino and travel loyalty expert who also helps people turn their travel dreams into reality. And now your host, Michael Traeger. How's it going, Michael?
It's going great. I am finally moved in and situated in lovely North Palm Beach, Florida. Actually, Jupiter, Florida. So everything is set, and I'm great. I'm in a great mood. Everything is all set up great, and I'm glad to hopefully get back on a normal schedule by next week. But it's just good to finally be settled.
That's awesome. Yeah, man. I've really enjoyed the photo you're sending with your morning exercise by the beach. That's pretty awesome. That's a great place to have morning exercises, man. It's way better than any gym, that's for sure. The views, the nature, the
Yeah.
smells.
It's just I've always wanted to live steps away from the beach, and the beach here is so nice. So I love, as annoyed as I wake up sometimes, or you're sometimes wake up in a strange mood, just being able to spend some time by the beach, pretty much so every morning, unless it's raining, is just a wonderful thing. So I feel super duper happy. I love my new office. Everything is good. We've got internet fiber, which is
Yay.
really good. So I don't have to deal with the people of that horrible cable company that everybody hates. And everyone's like is shouting out the name right now. And everything's great except for this sadness of Mirage.
Yeah, man. That's our news story today. The Mirage Las Vegas today, just a few hours ago, has closed its doors for the last time. The Mirage is 34 years old, one of the youngest of the hotels. The first mega resort on the Strip, the first mega resort pretty much anywhere, that pretty much redefined the Strip, uh, closing its doors to rebrand to the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino and Guitar Tower Hotel thing. Some weird ass long name that they came up with, where even if you try to hashtag the syllables, it still makes no sense. But yeah, man, it's really unfortunate. But that's Las Vegas. They always say don't get attached to anything in Las Vegas because you never know, when it's going to be the last time. But yeah, it's all over the news today. Of course, the Mirage Las Vegas is no other. The only other news piece that came out is that the the Neon Museum is the Neon Museum is moving and expanding, and they might be coming over here where I live, over by the Arts District. So that'll be a nice short walk away, hopefully. Though I can't imagine how they're going to move all of those signs in that building. That's going to be moving sucks, as you know.
Yeah,
Imagine that. Imagine
yeah,
that.
no,
Imagine having to move the Stardust sign. It's crazy, man.
imagine having to move the Mirage Volcano.
Hopefully they get it. I mean, I had another idea of what they can do for the Mirage Volcano. There has got to be a science museum somewhere, right? That would love to have a volcano exhibit right outside their museum.
Yeah, it's tough. Well, let's go. Let's jump right into the tease, and we will cover all of this and more.
All right, it is time for the tease.
Okay. Well, yes, this is our tribute to Mirage, and might even become a 2-day tribute to Mirage. And as Movestra was saying, property was not very old at all. The property opened on November 22nd, 1989. And what's very interesting is that in the prior 16 years, and this is from a little piece that Steve Wynn wrote about the closing of Mirage, which we'll put a link to in the show notes. In the prior 16 years prior to 1989, no completely new hotel had been built in Las Vegas. So I was thinking prior 16 years. So guess which hotel that was, which was the other, and we're talking full new build hotels, not adding a tower or adding some rooms. But do you know what that other hotel, which was the other new hotel that was built in Las Vegas, which was 16 years before Mirage? I'll give you a hint.
Okay.
It's where Zorkfest 2024 is.
Oh, so the original MGM Grand, which became Bally's, which became the Horseshoe, and then half of Horseshoe became part of Paris.
That's right. On December 4th, 1973, MGM, which was Kirkorian's property, opened on December 4th, 1973 as MGM Grand. And 1973 to 1989, if I am correct with my maths, is 16 years.
Wow.
That's pretty, this is what is so important for people to understand is that period after MGM Grand opened in 1973 until the point at which Mirage opened, a lot of things happened in that period. One was there was the removal of the mob from Las Vegas, pretty much so, and that was happening in the late 70s into the early 80s. Stardust is one that was spoken about all of the time. But Las Vegas, from the late 70s to the 80s, was sort of on I don't know, I don't want to call it like a downhill trajectory, but there wasn't a lot of vision and there wasn't a lot of growth. Now, what coincided with that was the opening of Atlantic City in 1979. And of course, that siphoned off some amount of business because, as many know, Atlantic City, the casino revenues for Atlantic City from 1979 until I think some point in the mid 90s exceeded the casino revenue of the Las Vegas Strip on a year over year basis. So there was an incredible amount of gambling that was going on in Atlantic City because that was the only other jurisdiction within the United States other than Las Vegas in Nevada where you could gamble. So that's something interesting to think about. But I think what really touches me about Mirage with this 1989, because I was 19 years old in 1989, is I feel that this resort closing was sort of my generation of new resorts because it wasn't like something that was built when I was a child or built before I was born. It was something that was built a few years before I was legally able to gamble in Las Vegas. So that's what's sort of neat to me. So that's a lot. It's a lot different. Also, the fact that this property is really not very old. What did you say it was, Movestro? That's 34 years old, right?
Yeah, 34.
Right. So that's also something that's really unusual, which explains definitely why you wouldn't implode a property like this, or at least we hope that won't happen. We're pretty sure, because it really is a relatively new property. But I do feel more of a connection because it is the first super casino. I call it a super casino. What did you call it, Movestro? You called it a mega resort. That's the same, but it really did transform Las Vegas.
Yeah, it did. All the casinos prior to that, the gambling establishments, hotels, pretty much one level. So when you look at old pictures of well, when I say the Flamingo, I mean the original. I mean, it's not doesn't look like that anymore, obviously. But like it was all these oddly shaped configurations of one level floors, and then you had the casino, and then the food wasn't necessarily great. And when Steve Wynn made the Mirage with all these like levels of flooring, a large casino, he also brought in entertainment that you couldn't get anywhere else. The culinary scene changed in Las Vegas because of the kind of restaurants he opened at his hotel. So there are so many. I just wrote an article recently called 7 Ways the Mirage transformed the Las Vegas Strip, and which is why, even though the Mirage will be gone, it cannot be forgotten because it pretty much shaped the rest of the Strip. It changed uh, the industry altogether, as also as far as uh, luxury goes, as far as customer service, the way the staff is trained, the surveillance cameras, all of those things, were an idea of Wynn, and he made it happen. So yeah, man, it's
Well,
Mega
also
Resort for
that
sure.
what happened after, Mirage brought this entirely new generation of Las Vegas, and the amount of development in the 10 years after Mirage opened was absolutely spectacular.
Oh yeah.
Like pretty much so like doubling the town's capacity of hotel rooms just in the 10 years after Mirage. So it's like you had this hiatus for 16 years of not having a new property. Then you had this amazing super casino, which many people did think was going to fail because they thought the idea was absolutely insane, and then it didn't, and it ushered in this new era of super casinos. So I'm going to read to you a little bit of Steve Wynn's tribute to the resort, which was in the Review Journal, and just a few just a few little pieces from that article. So he began work on the Mirage in the mid 1980s before opening the doors of the resort on November 22nd, 1989. If you had a sense of humor, you would have understood the tremendous contradiction in the name, he said. She was most definitely not actually a mirage, but a dazzling and commanding reality. The largest hotel ever built at that point in history, that's important to remember,
Yep.
anywhere in the world. 2,000 of her 3,000 rooms reached out to the strip, beckoning and welcoming the public. Instead of neon, a garden of dozens of rich Canary Island palm trees and a cool, refreshing waterfall that glistened in the hot Nevada desert sun. Visible between the towers, a round four-story atrium that suggested the round midsection of a woman promising future life. I had never heard that before.
Wow.
But the notion of offspring turned out to be real as well. In the prior 16 years, no new hotel had been built in Las Vegas, perhaps the result of the spread of gambling to Atlantic City and the beginning of a widespread Indian gaming in California. But other than a few additional rooms being built at existing hotels such as Golden Nugget, nothing was built from scratch. However, in the next decade following the 1989 arrival of Mirage, we rushed into a virtual doubling of the town's capacity and became the fastest growing city in America. To call the Mirage a catalyst would be an understatement. So that's pretty cool when you think of all of that. So that was huge. Uh, Huge. And he went on to say, dependent on Mirage, so much depended on Lady Mirage. Almost 8,000 employees and their families depended on her. Siegfried and Roy depended on her. The Dolphins and the kids depended on her. And it turns out the future of Las Vegas depended on her. What is so wonderful about this grand enterprise is that she did the job and she got it done for everybody. Bravo, Mirage. You put a warm smile on the face of our city. That's pretty well said.
That is pretty well said.
But this is interesting to think. If Steve Wynn hadn't had that vision and Mirage hadn't opened, what would have happened in those next 10 years?
That's an interesting concept. Hadn't thought of that before.
Right? Because the Mirage, because because Vegas, I think we've talked about this before, but the Mirage is definitely, there is like, Vegas before Mirage and Vegas after Mirage. And I think there are different points in the Las Vegas history where you can do a before and after, but definitively one of those points is before and after Mirage, I would say. One of the biggest points. I'm not sure about, we could argue about some of the other ones, but it's sort of, I think we were talking about like how now, like the year whatever 2022 or whatever was the ushering in like the whole like sports, especially with the Raiders stadium, the before and after, sports in Las Vegas. And then maybe that's, between the Golden Knights and the Raiders, there's a period before and after sports, but definitely there is a pre and post Mirage period for sure. And I don't think anyone could argue that at all.
Indeed. What I'm wondering is what's going to happen to those wine bottles outside of Plum that are, I mean, that's someone's going to have to drink those. I don't know. But I mean, how long have those bottles been there?
One doesn't know. It's sort of cool though. It's a neat. I mean, the pool area will turn into a great pool area for Hard Rock, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
mean, that's just the overall design. I mean, there's so much good design in Mirage. I am really curious what they're going to do with the atrium because you have remember what they did with Hard Rock in Atlantic City. They had this huge gaudy chandelier above these tall escalators, and they replaced that with a big guitar. Remember in Atlantic City,
Yeah,
I sort of wonder what they're going to do with the atrium to make it more hard rockish. Is that a good word?
that is a good
Um,
word. Yeah.
to make it more like hard. Obviously, you've got the guitar tower. Also, like the exact position of the. Are you familiar with exactly where the guitar tower is going to land?
Yeah, it's gonna land pretty much where the volcano is, but it looks like from renderings that part of it at like the wider area of the guitar body might actually be over the street itself, but it could just be the way the renderings look, but it kind of looks like that could be the case, which will be interesting because it's the guitar shape, how it is, so it's like the wider part looks like it goes out over the strip a little bit. But yeah, it's the entire area where the volcano is right now is definitely going to be occupied by the guitar tower.
So that's going to also add quite a few more rooms. I also wonder what they're going to do with the villas because those villas are really quite iconic and they're definitely have Roger Thomas's footprint in them.
They're
But I wonder if they're going to get rid of this like classical Italian villa kind of thing and turn them more into like something that I would think that Hard Rock would do or something like Hard Rock Palms ish.
Yeah, I know they're keeping the villas, but I'm not. I'm sure they're going to renovate them.
And in your article, the Mirage transformed the Las Vegas Strip. You also brought up the other thing is that Mirage was the first hotel to open up that had extensive use of surveillance cameras,
Hmm.
or they only had surveillance cameras. And the other thing that you mentioned, and this was Mirage was also the precedent for financing of large scale developments because they did use junk bonds to
Right.
finance the Mirage, which had never been before with Michael Milliken. I think he went to prison a year or two after that. And that was something that was interesting too. So that changed the way, the development of money. And of course, other things like, this whole habitat for Siegfried and Roy, as well as the show, as well as the dolphin habitat, which I know is can be relatively controversial, but was something something really much different at Mirage that had never been done before. I mean, I think the thing that's so interesting to me about Mirage, and I did stay there for a tournament about 2 years ago or 3 years ago. What's so interesting about it to me is the scale of it because at one point it was like the largest hotel in the world. I think it probably was also the largest casino in the world, but it doesn't seem that large anymore, which really tells you also how far we've come. At least does that grip you that way that it doesn't really seem like it's that large anymore?
It seems like it's average now with other resorts. I would think Fontainebleau did a great job of, even though they have a much larger casino, it doesn't feel big. And that's because the way they space everything out, and there's a lot of breaks between the carpet and yeah, uh, regular flooring, and the way they section things off, it doesn't feel like you're lost in a cubicle farm of slot machines. They did a fantastic job of having an extremely large casino, but making it not feel huge. When I was walking around the Mirage yesterday, there was people everywhere. Like so many people, wanted to come in and just give it a one last
And you
walk
showed us
around.
some of those pictures too. So, I mean, that's good
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah. And I was playing it as we were talking. And I also got myself a $1 chip because you got to get a Mirage chip. Anytime a casino closes, you got to get a chip. So I got one of that, but it was so packed yesterday, and it was just a lot of people were just coming out and having their last memories, and going through memory lane and all that stuff. And I'm just glad it's not being imploded because we'll be able to go back into the building and be like, oh, this is where that was. This is where this used to be. Okay, this used to be the Still, which before that was Revolution Lounge. This is where their Cinnabar was. This was where the deli was. This was where um, Diablo's Cantina was. This was where the theater, and they're keeping the theater as I understand it. Like a lot of stuff they're going to keep, it's just going to look very different. Uh,
And
so
you
yeah,
also have a volcano. You have the final publicly announced volcano eruption.
yeah, I got it.
You dropped on the Travelzork channel,
Yep, on
which
the
is super
Travel Zork
cool.
YouTube channel within hours of it happening. It was the last scheduled one. There was one that they had today as part of their closing ceremonies, which happened during the day, which kind of looks weird to see the volcano during the day. Like it doesn't look as awesome as it does at night. But I also understand that there was a surprise 11:30 show that no one was expecting, which is interesting because I was there for the surprise 10:30 because I was getting just outdoor footage of the Mirage, and then I heard the music start playing, and I was like, "Wait, are they really gonna?" And yeah, oh wow, okay, there's one happening. So a lot of people were scrambling over because they didn't expect it to happen. But by the time 11 o'clock came, it was crowded. It was like a lot of people. I've never seen a crowd that big for the volcano, and yeah, so many people. And it almost took forever just to get out of there, just to get over to the crosswalk to Harris. So yeah, a lot of people came out for one last hurrah yesterday. That's for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of people worked. I mean, a lot of people worked there from day one in 1989. I mean, you could think about it like in theory. I was 19 years old in 1989. If I'd gone and worked at Mirage at 19 years old, I could have basically like retired now at the closing. That's crazy to think, right?
That is, yeah.
Like literally you could have worked one job, right, your entire life and just been like, okay, I'm done. Like, how do you even move on to another job if you've worked that whole job your entire life? But it is, I mean, it's sad. I would have loved to have seen another company or an independent company. That would have been amazing. Take over the Mirage and keep it as the Mirage. But as we know, Vegas is changing. And, the scale, it's still, it was the first super casino, largest hotel in the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But now in 2024, it's just not that anymore. It's not, it's spectacular in the history of it, but it's not, I mean, I think it's not spectacular in the realm of like it would break any records in the world, or and I think that's part of what happens in Las Vegas. These properties transform themselves, and Hard Rock is a very, very good operator. They've done great. The Seminoles have done great job in Atlantic City. They do a very good job in Tampa, as well as down the road from me now in Fort Lauderdale. So I think they will do I think they will do the Mirage proud. They also tend to have really good entertainment. So I think it'll be cool. I think it'll be tough. I just don't like I said, when I look at Mirage and I see that atrium and I think the South Pacific theme, I just wonder how they're gonna like de-South Pacific it and turn it into Hard Rock. But I'm sure they will, and it will be pretty spectacular because that atrium is like 4 stories high.
Mm.
So they've got a lot of space there to do really cool shit. So I'm curious to see it.
Yeah, I'm sure they have some sort of a creative genius that's going to find a way to make the most out of that. But it's hard to, for me, it's just hard to picture, standing in that walkway, looking up at that dome where the Mirage sign from outside, which is very clever, you can see it from inside of the atrium, the outside of the hotel, which is freaking clever. Makes some great photos. I just can't imagine what they're gonna do to that space, but I hope it don't suck. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna say that.
I hope it don't suck.
I hope it don't
Well, I will
suck.
leave you with one thing. Mike E, who does some great reviews. He has a website, Vegas Snob, and he did a great review of the Mirage Villas about 2 years ago. And he did a post today on X, and it said, "When I stayed in the villas, a Mirage butler of 31 years told me my favorite Vegas casino business nugget that I knew I could never share until the night they closed. I remember commenting that with his tenure, he must have seen generations of families, perhaps even children of whales, now themselves major players. His response was blunt: no, every regular, and that's regular in quotation marks, and this would be regular whales, here has a shelf life of 3 to 5 years. After that, we have either wiped them out or they're in prison." He said, and Mikey goes on to say, "I was stunned. The implications here are outrageous. 19 years of reading and writing specifically about luxury Vegas. A common thread among the community is trying to rationalize whale level bets proportionally to one's own gambling budget. But trying to draw equivalencies with other bets, our credit lines, and our incomes never works. Why? Because the vast majority of us play at sustainable levels for far longer than 3 to 5 years. At best, a whale has a gambling problem, and at worst, it's dirty money. And ever since that stay, I never envied the six-figure a hand player again. Well, except the part about getting picked up in a Gulfstream. Give me that. And I gave you that. That's also, that link to that thread will be there. But I've often heard that before, because we try. I think there's a normal. This is sort of normalcy when this is the part where Movestro says, "Do you have anything else for us today?" The part of like normal trying to rationalize people who come with 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 a week, for a weekend in Las Vegas. People who bet $5 a spin, 20 a spin, 30 a spin, $1 a spin, or, $75 average, 100, 200, 300, 500 an average. None of that ever truly compares, even on what we consider to be the higher level, to what some of these whales are doing, which is literally like 50,000, 100,000 a hand.
Mhm.
So you're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars that's being cycled through the casino. And the idea that those people have a relatively short shelf life probably makes a lot of sense, because if you think about, if you're betting $100,000 a hand, your longevity in a casino, the swings are just huge. And even if you're making an incredible amount of money a year, it's still really, really hard to fade those kind of significant gambling losses of, 5 to $30 million in a stay. So it is interesting that they tend to wipe them out or they're in prison. So that's interesting. I'm not sure I totally believe that. I bet that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but be careful what you wish for. You never want to gamble on that level, because it's probably not going to be pretty for many things in your life.
Agreed. Before we get going, is there anything on your mind or anything you'd like to share?
Oh, I've got lots of things to share, but I think we keep this to the Mirage tribute. On my list, I do want to talk about my one of my favorite people. Marilyn was recently at Wynn and had a great trip at Wynn, and how she had some great host interaction when she checked out. And I want to talk about how we have to remember that if we don't ask, we don't get. I also have been hearing some rumors about MGM giving up the Springfield Casino and Ohio casinos, and I haven't really dug deeply into it. And Springfield's an interesting one to talk about, so I'd like to talk about that. I also am super curious, Movestro, how you're surviving this heat wave in Las Vegas. So there's a lot of stuff on my mind, but I think we'll have to, because is it still warm, or is it a cool wave this week? Is it only like 110?
Oh yeah, only 110, man. Nice and cold outside. No, it's still pretty freaking horrible. Even at midnight, temperatures out here are are crazy. Right now, I'm just looking just to see. It is 111 degrees with fair skies right now. 111. So that's what we got going on, and it's probably not
Wow.
going to get any better than that. Yeah,
You did
no.
an amazing job of tribute articles. Everyone should go to travelzork.com. It's right there on the homepage, easy to say. 7 ways the Mirage transformed the Las Vegas Strip. Interesting you chose the number 7. Looking back, productions at the Mirage Las Vegas, and also the history of the Mirage Las Vegas. Also, you had a super cool article which does come up as the Coke versus Pepsi, the battle for the Las Vegas Strip. So I
Hmm.
thought that was sort of interesting too. But thank you, Movestro, for putting together such a wonderful, combination of tribute articles on Travelzork. So it's so timely and so well done. And I think no property deserves it more than Mirage.
Agreed. Oh, by the way, Saturday, 113 degrees. That's where it's going on Saturday. So yeah, it's
You know
freaking
what? I'd never feel bad for you until it's over 118.
hot. This is why I try to avoid going out during the day. At night, that's when I go out. Nighttime, around midnight, 2 in the morning. That's what it's like. Oh, it's like 90 degrees, 95 degrees at 2 in the morning. It's fantastic. Alrighty, well, happy to do the articles, man. I just thought it was fitting to, it's the Mirage, man. We just can't let it be like, all right, and it's not like the Trop, it's the Mirage. The Trop, yeah, they get an article. That's about it. But the Mirage, it was such a game changer. It was such a trailblazer for all of Las Vegas and more. So it just seemed fitting to send it off properly. Alrighty, and that's gonna do it for this episode. Luxury travel booking, travelzork.travel. Visit us at travelzork.travel to plan your next amazing vacation, and please join the conversation on social media. You can find us easily. All social platforms are at Travelzork. We'll see you next time.